자, 다음 보실 영상은요. 그리스에서 온 영상입니다. 네, 오위의 CEO 일리아스 바톨로마이오스님의 게이미피케이션 입문. 네, 영상 함께 시청하시겠습니다.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ilias Vartholomaios, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Owiwi. It is a pleasure to be speaking to you today, even if it's through this pre-recorded message and video. It is a great honor to be able to be participating in this gamification conference and to also share my experience and my knowledge on the field of gamification. Basically, the premise of this presentation is to give you a quick walkthrough and primer on what is gamification, why it's important, and how you can utilize it within your own business, along with a few successful case studies and best practices, and to essentially show you and open your horizons in terms of the power of play and the benefits it can provide to your organizational objectives. But before I begin, a little bit about myself. My name is Ilias. I am the CEO and co-founder of Owiwi. Owiwi is a game-based assessment tool or a psychometric tool that measures soft skills in prospective and existing employees. And the way that we do that is through a gamified environment where every interaction helps to shape a comprehensive soft skills profile. We sell this tool to HR departments to help them make better hiring decisions. But ultimately, we want to change the recruitment experience for candidates by incorporating mechanisms that video games have and have successfully incorporated over the years to increase engagement and satisfaction. With that being said, a little bit about myself. I come from a business and management background. For me, the path of gamification was very natural as it blended three of my favorite passions. One of them is gaming, of course. I used to be a gamer, now I don't have enough time. The other was psychology, something that I always found very interesting. And the third, of course, being business. And that is why I think gamification is so interesting, because it combines these different functions and disciplines to create a sort of new way of approaching engagement and awareness, but also productivity. So on that note, I will share my screen now so I can show you my presentation. Gamification. A lot is being said about it. Some of you may be familiar with what it is. Others of you may not. Let's establish what it isn't. It is not a buzzword. It is not a passing trend or a firework that will fizzle out. It is something that is here to stay. It is something that has proven that it can provide value depending on how you want to use it. And in its very core essence, it is defined as the craft or the process of applying elements from video games, the best parts from video games, to improve the experience for the candidate, with the purpose of driving a particular and specific behavior. This behavior could be action-oriented, such as, for example, to refer a friend or to make a purchase, or to simply engage in a kind of behavior that won't necessarily even provide any real value, but is mostly good for our motivation. So essentially, it is comprised of a lot of different principles. This is, I think, a very clear and concise example of all the different parts and components that go into gamification. It is very important to keep these in mind, and a lot of these are extremely important, and we'll show you how and why in a few slides down. But the first step in incorporating gamification is that you need to have a form of challenge in place. You need to have a mission or an objective that this user that you are targeting, you want them to solve. They must also have very clear goals, so they know exactly what they're working towards, as well as very clear rules as to how they can play this game. All games have this, if you've had the chance to play any games recently. Another big part of gamification is that in the attempt of the user to address a challenge and to succeed in accomplishing a goal, there needs to be consistent feedback throughout the process, telling them how they have been performing and how well or how far away they are from their goal. Failure is a big part of gaming, but thankfully, being in a game-like environment means that we can always restart without necessarily losing our progress, unless you're playing Dark Souls, of course. And more importantly, it provides encouragement throughout every step of the experience. And the way that it usually provides is through coaching, by telling you what to do better, but also by providing rewards, intrinsic and extrinsic, which we'll discuss in a little bit what they are. So by combining all these elements, you essentially can build your own gamification process. Why use gamification? Well, aside from the fact that it's meant to be fun, the most important thing is that it has the sole purpose of serving as a motivator for candidates to or users to complete a particular action. Most use cases have it being used to increase loyalty, to increase awareness for a product or a service, to increase participation or engagement, which is usually the main use case for gamification, and to extract a specific behavior, as we said earlier. How do we do this? By incorporating these game-like elements that we mentioned earlier, such as badges, achievements, and rewards, to keep people motivated to repeat the same behavior again and again. Now, these are a few very successful examples of gamification. Now, these examples can range from consumer products to applications to work-like solutions. But I think these will be a very good way for you to get a quick idea of how gamification can work and in what context, because there isn't any context that gamification cannot be applied in, but it is a matter of first defining what you want to accomplish by incorporating it in whatever case you are looking at. So some of you might be familiar with the language learning app Duolingo. It is the application that we're seeing in front of us. It is a language learning solution. And what they've done is they have gamified the process of learning a new language. And the way that they've done that is by incorporating micro-learning, so providing small bursts of knowledge and new information that the candidate can process on their own time. And to keep them motivated and engaged in terms of completing their language learning course, they provide a nice visual experience where they provide rewards, benefits, leaderboards to compare your results with your friends. And things of that nature to sort of help make it more immersive and sticky is another term that we would use, product stickiness. Another example of gamification being used this time in the world of coders and programmers is this solution that we're seeing here, which essentially allows you to sort of keep practicing your code and to work with other people online and by comparing sort of how well you've been doing your performance. As we can see, the leaderboard on the right-hand side gives you that aspect of competition in terms of how good am I and how well am I doing. And this keeps people motivated to keep on using the service. Gamification, though, doesn't have to necessarily be that productive. It can be something more abstract, as is the case with Forest. Forest was just simply an application that tried to gamify mental well-being and productivity. And the way that they did that is by you simply open the application, you leave it on the side, and you let your forest grow in real time, so to speak. And then you can then compare your forest with your friends, and you can see essentially who is the most productive in terms of also contributing towards a social cause, such as the reforestation of new burnt areas. Another very similar and successful example is Fitbit, which is a fitness, exercise, and health activity monitor. A very successful business that also combines hardware, as you have to wear a bracelet, but also their software. What they've essentially done is gamify the process of working out and staying fit. You can receive badges that can tell you, for example, congratulations, you have accomplished walking 10,000 steps today. The goal for next week is 20,000. And you can then share these badges and these rewards and achievements with your friends, as well as compete and see, who is the healthiest and who is the most active with regards to their personal health. Another very interesting example is Habitica. This is an application where essentially they have tried to really gamify our general lifestyle and productivity in the productivity space. So the idea is that you create one of your own little avatars, someone to represent you on this journey that you've created. And then you simply input your goals and your to-do, your task list into this application. And every time you complete a task, your character levels up. He gains new abilities and new equipment and items that can help him get stronger. And then you can sort of go with your friends on sort of, quests to try and do group activities together, as well as other sort of game-based adventures within this environment. So we saw a few examples of very successful gamified solutions. And the truth is that these applications between them have millions, if not hundreds of millions of users. So there obviously must be a reason why that is the case. And that is because gamification is addicting. It is supposed to be addicting. It has been designed in such a way to be addicting. And why is it so addicting? Exactly because it provides you with that dopamine rush of successfully completing a level or a challenge or getting a reward back. And this is something that keeps you hooked in terms of using the same solution again and again. The best way to describe this is what we would call within the world of gamification engagement loops. So these are essentially loops and triggers that elicit one specific response once something is done. By creating effective engagement loops, you can essentially assure that your users will stay continuously motivated and engaged with the solution. But it's very important here to focus particularly on the triggers on the top left-hand side that say extrinsic and intrinsic. And I'll describe exactly what that is. Intrinsic and extrinsic are types of motivation or rewards that somebody can receive. Intrinsic rewards are more personal, less tangible, more psychological in terms of the benefit that they provide and the rush of dopamine that we receive. It could be the feeling that you're just curious and you want to find something out. It could be something as being recognized, like, for example, good job, Ilia, you're doing great on this presentation, keep it going. Or it could be the sense that you belong somewhere within the community. Extrinsic rewards, on the other hand, are external benefits. These are usually things that are more tangible and they're more practical in a way. For example, it could be that we will give you a gift card or a voucher or some money, or it could be that you'll receive punishment. These things motivate us perhaps more than the intrinsic, but you have to be able to provide both kinds of rewards and motivations by using intrinsic and extrinsic within your engagement loops in order to keep people motivated, because just one form of reward will not be enough. You need something to balance it to keep things, new and fresh for the experience of the candidate. Which brings us to why it's so important to be able to reward people for their time when they're interacting with a gamified solution. Now, these are all basically intrinsic rewards and motivations, and these are the most common that you will see because they have zero cost. You could get points for completing an action. You can get badges that indicate that you have done this several times, milestones or rankings in the leaderboard, interactive communities where you can discuss with each other and share your experiences, as well as competition and social awards that you can then share on social media. These are all things that keep people motivated to keep using it. You might have seen, for example, even people who played Candy Crush who might be sharing, for example, oh, please click here and give me 100 gems and you'll also get 200 gems back or something like that. But what we just discussed now is mostly gamification within the context of, let's say consumer and sales oriented and marketing, but it goes beyond just that. Gamification has now made its way into organizations, and it's not just about increasing engagement for a particular solution or application. The use cases for gamification in the workplace are near limitless. And this is actually where the most amount of growth is actually happening within the realm of gamification. So in short, gamification within an organization can be used in multiple ways. It can be used to educate employees coming into the business or to learn a new skill. Within HR, we call that upskilling and reskilling. It can be used to motivate employees to work harder and to achieve their goals and their targets, such as in sales teams, for example. It can be, of course, used to engage employees across different issues within the organization, whether they are function related or value related. It can optimize workflows by making things a little bit more automated and more streamlined. And of course, the gamification aspect makes companies look more modern and progressive. And this in turn makes it easier to attract new talents to your organization, which is a major issue in HR today. Now, you might say, but gamification, it's a game. Can I take it seriously? Yes. Yes, you can take it seriously. And here we can see just some successful KPIs of the benefits that companies have had by incorporating gamification. As you can see, it has a proven track record of increasing productivity and engagement across the board. And it is actually something that is very well received and wanted by the candidates themselves in terms of making dry or monotonous processes a little bit more fun, productive, and competitive to keep us all engaged on a higher level. And of course, games are supposed to be fun, so why wouldn't people want to work with gamified solutions? For example, one such case within HR is, for example, in Zoho CRM, it's a motivate sub feature that you can activate, which gamifies certain elements of your CRM to increase and promote competitiveness amongst your team. And as you can see, it doesn't necessarily have to look like a game. You just have to use the right mechanisms, which could be leaderboards in one case, points or milestones or badges. It doesn't have to look like a game in order for it to be gamification. You just have to use the right mechanisms to achieve the goal that you want. Another example is with Salesforce, where again, for example, they follow the same kind of nature with different awards and levels, and of course, leaderboards that they can then compare their performance with their peers and their colleagues. And these are all very similar, and very simple forms of gamification for businesses to follow. But of course, it's not just in sales. Another use case for gamification, and this is where sort of our field of specialty is that it can also be used in recruitment or in HRs in general for training and development, as we saw with Duolingo. But imagine that being applied with new learning content that companies can serve. Within the world of recruitment, gamification allows us to test for specific skills. It saves time. It makes the process less stressful and thus more enjoyable for the candidate. And it also separates you from the competition because you have something different in terms of the process and the way that you approach your people. So this brings us to Owiwi and what we do. So what we've done is, like I said earlier, developed a game-based assessment tool that measures soft skills. The way that we do that is that we have various scenarios and dilemmas that candidates need to resolve, all within a highly gamified environment. And depending on how they answer these questions, we can then see greater insights into their soft skills. What we've essentially tried to do is take the old and unsophisticated means of assessment and replace it with new and exciting technologies that can speak to today's candidates and job seekers in the job market today. As you can see, we have incorporated a few more game-like elements in our solution, such as, for example, the ability to select an avatar, which represents you on this journey. And then, for example, we have the game world or the map where the actual assessment takes place. And in our particular case, every island that you see here represents one particular soft skill. This is just a bit of a more in-depth look into what the actual assessment interface looks. While it is highly gamified, you can also notice that it's actually very simple. It's essentially a highly visualized questionnaire, multiple choice question format. And essentially, we have incorporated things like, for example, the progress bar, the visual illustrations, the avatar, the sound effects. These are all things that have gamified our particular solution. But I want to clarify here that I've shown you several examples from the most simple to the most, let's say, advanced in what I consider Owiwi. The difference here is that there is a limit and a segmentation of what is considered gamification and what isn't. So when you're looking at the problem or the process that you want to gamify, it's extremely important to try and keep this chart in mind. There's a difference between doing game-inspired design. There's a difference between doing gamification or a serious game like we have. Then, of course, you have a full-fledged game which has, the only purpose there is entertainment. In our particular case, serious games, what separates them from gamification is that it looks more like a game and it has a purpose other than just entertainment. In our particular case, it is to ascertain the fit and the soft skills of prospective and existing employees. So there is a limit in terms of how much gamification is too much gamification, and is it the right approach and process for you? So this is something to keep in mind. Now, there are a lot of models that you can use in terms of how you can go about gamifying a certain process. This is the gamification model. This is the simplest breakdown that you can follow in terms of the things that you need to consider when looking to gamify something, split across the 4 key categories of measurement, behavior, reward, and mechanics. But of course, this model has been further developed by a professional called Yukai Chu. He's considered to be the leader thought leader of gamification in our field, where he has developed the Octalysis model to essentially help you get into more detail as to what you can do or what you need to consider when gamifying a solution. If you look it up, Octalysis Yukai Chu, you should be able to find it with relative ease. Now, if this is your first time looking at gamification, you can simply follow the gamification canvas model, which is a lot more simple. The idea here is that for each section, you want to provide 3 post-it notes with the sort of main points for each section. And this is something that is supposed to be more agile and lean, so you can, continuously update and change the model according to your needs. But this is a great reference point to get started if you're looking to incorporate gamification in any capacity. And finally, these are sort of some final best tips as to what you can keep in mind when implementing gamification. For me, the most important thing for you to consider is, what are your engagement loops? What are the rewards that you're offering? And is gamification the way to accomplish the goal that you're trying to solve? Because a lot of the times we try to apply the wrong method or the wrong solution to the right problem. So in this case, it takes a lot of thought for you to really consider and think, do we want to gamify? And if so, how can we maximize its results? And these are some great pointers for you to keep in mind moving forward. This marks the end of my presentation. I hope you found it helpful in the short amount of time that I could present. I hope that you've gained a little bit more knowledge and expanded your horizons in terms of what is gamification, where it can be used, and how it can be valuable to your organization. And on that note, I'd like to thank you very much for your time and have a great rest of the day. Bye bye.
네, 영상 잘 시청하셨나요?